Hey everyone, welcome to PunkCast. My name is William Maxwell. I'm a student of Web3 and the owner of Punk9827. Cryptopunks are 10,000 uniquely generated characters stored permanently on the Ethereum blockchain. No punk is the same. This is a show dedicated to celebrating the punks behind the punk. My hope for this podcast is that we capture the essence of the punk culture, elevate the brand and the individual behind the punk. One last thing. Projects discussed on the show is not financial advice. Crypto and NFTs are a volatile and risky asset class. Please always do your own research. Other than that, let's go. GM. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of PunkCast. Today, we're back with a very special punk, a dev punk number 98. She's got 3 Atties, dark hair, black lipstick, and rare and the understated Welding goggles. In real life, she's an ex-Googler and currently the GM for Cryptopunks that's organized so many fantastic events around the world for punks. Please welcome Miss Natalie Stone to the show, or Natalie Stone. How are you?
I'm good. GM, thanks for having me, Max. I'm excited to be here.
Excited to have you. I'm going to get straight into business and ask you a very serious question. When are we getting lunchboxes?
Very soon, working on it. It's one of my top priorities.
I was pestering Noah for the longest time as well, and I think most punks were as well. So, love to sort of have you on, and really excited to sort of unpack this story, your story. I think we've sort of wanted to try and make this happen for a bit of time. I think we caught up briefly at Punk's Brunch because I know you were in the middle of Ape Fest and all those wonderful things. So maybe we could start off with a simple question. Why Natalie Stone? How did you come up with that handle?
It's one of those handles you pick when you're in college and you think it's really cool to be mischievous and sexy. And it just sort of stuck. And maybe there's a reason why. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think mischief is a really fun quality that I look for in a lot of people that I connect with. And a little bit of innocent mischief is good for the soul. That's my take. But I mostly go by Stone, I think, as everybody kind of knows.
Pun intended.
Yeah.
It's just Stone is actually your real last name, so that's not like a Hollywood alias or anything like that. That's so cool.
No, it's my real last name. And it, gosh, how many years ago? I was working at an ad agency on a project for REI, actually. And there was a Natalie, another Natalie, and an Alina. And there were just too many Natalies on a project. And somehow I started getting called Stone. And it stuck and I loved it. I just thought, oh, wow, this is really cool. I'm going to stick with it. And it just felt so masculine and androgynous. So, kind of like my punk, to be honest. Tough but chic.
Awesome. Well, great to have you on. Maybe we could start off with a little bit about your background and your backstory before we get into all the crypto and NFT stuff. Love to sort of get to know who is Natalie Stone. Like, where did you grow up and what did you study?
Yeah, and I'm actually really excited about this, and probably also why I'm so nervous and procrastinated to do this with you is because I feel like this is maybe one of those first opportunities where I'm just going to share more just about Natalie Stone is Natalie Stone and not necessarily GM of Cryptopunks. And so it feels a bit more vulnerable. But yeah, who am I or what's my background? I grew up actually all over the world. My dad was a bit of an outlaw and a rolling stone, pun intended. And we definitely rolled a lot as a family. I lived in Istanbul and Portugal, California, Florida, Washington, D.C. I mean, that's where my family is now. And I sort of grew up with this openness to life and constant evolution. I literally lived in hotels at points. So my background was pretty diverse and eclectic and magical and chaotic all at the same time. So we came back to the United States and I, mostly ended up, I would say DC as a home and, spent high school there. And then I went to the University of Virginia where I got a double major in art history, no surprise there. and English literature. And then I actually ended up getting my master's in English lit as well. So yeah, very nerdy.
You mentioned your father was a bit of a Rolling Stone himself. Like, what was his profession? Like, what were you sort of traveling so much?
He was a bit of an outlaw, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, I gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. So of all things you could have studied, why art history and literature and the arts?
I mean, it was just always in my DNA. I mean, the interesting part about living in Portugal as a child in Istanbul is there actually was no I just really didn't watch any TV. And so I was a super avid reader. And, that reader and writer and that just always pulled me down into the direction of, literature and writing and literary theory. Um, and as far as art history, it just clicked. If I see an image and I read something next to it, I have almost a near photographic memory. And I don't know, it was almost like there was never another way. It's actually odd that I'm here today in this world. That's because at the time I really thought I would become a professor. And that was really the path I saw myself going down was academia. And it's not odd that I'm here. In a way, it's perfect that I'm here. And I feel very lucky that I'm back in the world of art and, the making of art history almost literally right now. Um, and I loved it. I am still an avid reader, and it just felt like a gift that I could do whatever I wanted and read books and write about them and think about them and think about how you think about things. And it was such a pleasure and such a great time in my life. I think if I were to ever change careers or have like a 180 all of a sudden in my life, I would 100% try to go back to school and get my doctorate or something like that.
Wow. Um, what would you have taught, do you think?
Um, well, I can tell you what my thesis was on many, many years ago was actually about the politics of the body. And I was really into George Bataille and kind of reframing the way that we look at sex and sexuality
Oh,
as an
wow.
act of rebellion. So that was what I thought it was so cool back in the day studying that.
As an act of rebellion. So, that's almost like a little bit of a punk vibe to it, in some
Oh, yeah. Definitely some punk BDSM vibes there for sure.
Amazing. And then so where did you go after studying, art history? Like, what was your sort of venture into, adulthood and,
Yeah.
getting a career?
It's funny. While I was in school, at this point, I'm out in Colorado and I'm getting my master's. And I actually worked when I was at UVA. I worked at Dave Matthews Band studio and was just a runner and assistant there. And I just thought it was so cool. It was just a cool gig. And so then when I moved to Colorado, I actually worked at all these music venues and I worked at Red Rocks. And it was just this actually very compatible job to being in school because every summer I'd have all these festivals that I could, help produce and work. And I did AR specifically. And I just got a job faster. I graduated and I got offered to go on a, tour around the United States and with this band called Tavachka. It's kind of this Russian folk gypsy band. And I hopped on a tour bus and the rest is, I guess, my history. And I never went back to academia. That was it. I fell in love with producing and my career just sort of took me in that direction. And so yeah, I was helping produce tours and music festivals. And then from there, I ended up working for Beats by Dre for a little bit because it was right when they started and they wanted to do, obviously, they were doing all these really cool parties and events. involving different musicians. And so I started doing those projects basically long. And from there, I ended up getting recruited to Google because they wanted to do things that felt more cool and music and, community focused. And then I was there for many, many years.
Oh wow. Well, did you mention AR as in augmented reality? Did I hear that?
Well, at Google, I definitely moved into AR. I actually did a project with Childish Gambino at Coachella. It was a AR app that we developed for him, and then we brought that AR app to life with this installation as part of the art program at Coachella. But yeah, I mean, at Google, I did a VR music video with LCD sound system. I did all these just weird experiments and experiences during my time there. It's not where I started. I started on the project I started on and was recruited for was Google I/O. And some people know it if you're a developer, but it's basically their big developer State of the Union address conference. And they wanted to make it more, they wanted it to be, the brief was, we want Burning Man. They didn't want Burning Man. I'll tell you that much. Because I literally brought art cars to the event. I think they wanted Coachella Light. But yeah, they wanted to kind of reimagine it from a conference to more of a festival, which is why they hired me. And that's where I started, and I led that project for many years. And it was an amazing opportunity, to work all across the organization. And that opportunity allowed me, the room to meet all these different teams and work with teams like Matt and John's old team, Creative Lab, or Google Arts and Culture, the VR team, and just the data team, just do these kind of weird experiments and build new media programs and work with Project Magenta, who was playing with AI and sound a lot at that time. Just, I mean, it felt really limitless for many years there at Google.
It's crazy. Like, what was the size of these events that you were organizing for like Google this Google I/O?
Yeah, Google I/O is like 10,000 people.
Wow,
So it's a
huge.
pretty massive, but I've worked on Bonnaroo. It's like, I don't even know, 50,000 people, Coachella, I did a lot of these huge, huge, huge events. But my favorites are actually always the more intimate ones. I'm all about intimacy and experience design, and I really try to bring that thoughtfulness to every way I think about digital spaces now and digital communities as well. But yeah.
Um, I want to touch on that a little bit in a moment, but I think you mentioned that you were connected with Matt and John. Did you know Matt and John before Cryptopunks came along?
Weirdly enough, no. Even though I worked, but it's funny, and this was before my time, but Matt and John have told me a story that is actually really hysterical. So Google I/O is, like I said, this big tentpole event that I, worked on. And I don't think it was my year because I don't think I would have required anyone to have done this. But apparently they ended up having to work what's called the sandbox. And the sandbox is where, you get this one-on-one time with Google developers and people on the product team, and they teach you about their launches or how to use their product, etc. And you're required to wear a uniform. And this year, I guess they were required to wear all green in these green sneakers. And they said they were working the floor at Google I/O, and they had a existential crisis where they just said, "This is not for us anymore. Like, what have we done?" And that was, I mean, I don't know if that was the genesis of CryptoPunks. I think that would be a bit dramatic, but it is funny that my connection to them is this. I ran this event where they had to wear terrible shoes. But yeah, but we did sit I did work with their team a lot, and I love that team. I worked with Creative Lab on a AI synth for the band Justice, which was kind of fun.
What can you help me try and understand what Creative Lab was as part of Google? Like, what were they
Yeah.
responsible for?
So, basically Google's really divided by their product orgs. But there's certain teams, like I sat on a team called Experiences. There's a team called Brand, the brand team, and then there's a team called Creative Lab. And it's Creative Lab is basically tries to take these problems that might exist, brand problems, essentially, storytelling problems, and solve them in a way that's incredibly creative, that's playful, that's experimental, and makes that technology more accessible and digestible. So, for example, LCD Sound System, when we worked with them, were like, "What do you think about AI?" And their feedback was like, "No way would I ever, why would I as an artist ever want that?" And so that became actually a brief for the Creative Lab, where they then said, "Okay, how can we make AI more accessible to musicians so it's not scary?" And their solution was, let's take very complex technology, I believe it was TensorFlow, and embed that in a synth, a digestible little unit that they use all the time that won't scare them in any way. And so it's this translation of technology, often in a physical way and a playful way, that just makes tech less scary, makes Google less scary, you know?
That's so
So that's
cool.
what Creative Lab is. And it's probably my favorite team at Google. I super respect them. And when I think about CryptoPunks doing things right, I definitely think about that, you know, DNA of experimentation that I respect, and that Matt and John, that obviously is part of who Matt and John are and what they create.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty cool. I didn't even know these sort of teams exist or those jobs exist. What a cool
Neither did
what a
I.
cool job.
Neither did I when I was studying art history.
Well, just to go back a little bit, uh, you mentioned that you also work for Beats by Dre. Were you familiar with Ian Rogers back then? Because I think he was had a bit of a stint with Beats by Dre.
No, I mean, technically, I was in there. I was like full time on their agency side, you know, but I was completely dedicated to them. But no, I didn't know Ian at the time at all. Even though I bet you we overlapped for sure. But yeah, it was such a cool time because I was a young producer, and they'd say, okay, we want to do a skate event at Tampa Pro. And all of a sudden you'd be like, great, Dr. Dre's here. And so was Lil Wayne. Like anything you did was just successful and had the most like top tier, amazing legends at your project. And so that was just a really exciting time to be a part of that project and brand for sure.
So Natalie, let me get this straight. You basically got paid to party most of the
I
time.
wish. No, what's the right way to frame it? I get paid to throw the best parties in the world.
What an amazing career. And so like you mentioned a couple names, like for example, Childish Gambino. Like, who's your favorite sort of artist to have been working with, or what were some of the cool events that you, or what were some of the best events that you sort of throw?
Um, Gosh, so many. I mean, Childish Gambino, I think, is very inspiring artist, truly someone who is a renaissance man and is open to any medium. I always appreciate artists who like to challenge themselves that way and really embody that spirit of rebellion and experimentation and disruption. Okay. I mean, I feel like I'm just like flexing right now, but I did this event called Save Our Stages. It was actually during the pandemic, and it was basically when all small independent venues were closing across the United States because they couldn't stay open. They were they were suffering like so many businesses were. And so we actually produced, in the peak of the pandemic, a decentralized music festival using actually AI cameras. These totally, not every shoot was remote, but we had Miley Cyrus, The Roots, the Foo Fighters, Phoebe Bridgers, the list goes on and on and on. And they all played for free, donated their time, and we produced a 3-day music festival that ended up raising millions of dollars, and that actually fed into this campaign in the United States called Save Our Stages. And the Save Our Stages Act actually ended up securing billions of dollars of funding for independent arts and music venues in the United States. So that is that was really, Miley Cyrus was actually pretty cool. I know I almost feel cheesy saying that, but she's almost one of those celebrities that you kind of expect that you're not, I'm not like, like that came in with my judgments. And she was just so cool and really dedicated to her craft. And that was just a really cool moment. The recording of her from that ended up going viral. And it was cool to see something that you created have such a huge impact for something that I cared about. I started in independent music venues.
That's so awesome. And
Yeah. I have this weird other life, this old previous life where it was very much around, I would say music, maybe more than anything else for a period of time.
yeah, I'm just trying to digest this all. I mean, it must have been such a amazing experience just to be at the forefront of all of this, right? You got that, you know, get to sort of hang out with musicians, enjoy music, enjoy these festivals and these events and people. I think I got into these sort of festivals late in life. I think I was too much of a nerd early in my life, but these some of the events that I've sort of been to have been sort of amazing. I'm actually the wife is booked tickets to go to Tomorrowland this year.
Oh,
Um,
amazing.
just one last hurrah before we sort of settle down and have some kids, I think.
I love
But I
it.
think but yeah, these festivals are amazing and great to sort of I guess know that you have this experience and these insights for events.
Yeah,
So,
when you're looking about festivals, to me, just to say it, I feel like I'm waxing poetic a little bit here, is I, you know, I never really felt like I belonged for a long time. Maybe I think I could make friends with a wall if I needed to, but I didn't, it was a bit of when you move so much as a kid, or you kind of have this more interstitial and, upbringing and sense of self and place. I never felt like I belonged. Yeah. And I remember my first music festival, it made sense to me, and it was just totally hippie jam band vibes. But I felt a sense of community that I hadn't really experienced, and I felt freedom. And I think that my mission and purpose is, I'm very, very focused on the potentiality of music and art and communal experiences to bring people together and to give people meaning and purpose. And I really believe that. And I think that everything, I think I've had a career that touches all these different areas, but I think that's the common theme that you'll find and at least what motivates and drives me forward. So,
amazing. I think what you sort of mentioned there, I think it definitely resonates with me. I sort of felt like a bit of a misfit as well until I got to the Web3 world. And then I found out that there are a whole bunch of other nerds just like me. um, so I think that sense of connection that you're sort of describing is quite empowering. Um, and so so what was next for you? So how did you eventually find your way into crypto, yoga, and then punks? Like, what was that journey?
yeah. I mean, such a fast journey, but what's the right way to describe it? Like every single decision in my life had prepared me for that step in a lot of ways. But I was at Google, and I was just kind of open to exploring and wrapping up my time there. And you know, my partner said to me, my partner Jeffrey, he said, he's in this band called Poolside, or he is Poolside, and he was kind of experimenting in the space of music NFTs. And I think he'd just done a drop with Sound XYZ back in the day. And I'd sort of helped. And he just said, listen, like, I think that this is the right world for you. You're creative, you love being on the bleeding edge, you love technology, you love art. Uh, you're a dork. Which I truly am. He's like, this is your home, this is your future. And so I actually went to NFT NYC as just to learn, and it was at this point, I think it's, the bull is happening, etc. But I knew people that worked at Yuga from our Google days. We had collaborated on a project to build a retail space. And so I went, and it was weird because I walked away after leaving APEST, and I just said, I don't know what it is, but I think I'm going to work for them. And, I ended up meeting the creative director there, former creative director, and we just hit it off. And my DNA is so much more CryptoPunks. I immediately started thinking CryptoPunks for me. And, at that point, Noah had just come on to Yuga and was kind of trying to figure out his way there. And so they brought me on to help figure out our way there for CryptoPunks and what it looked like. So even though it was kind of behind the scenes, I've been a part of punks for a long time. And I feel so blessed. I don't think there's any collection. I mean, you would have to be, there's no other collection that you could ever want to work on that but CryptoPunks. It's truly an honor, and it's an honor and responsibility that I take very, very, very seriously. So yeah, that's how I ended up there. It feels very lucky. It feels like I just walked into royalty. And that's the truth.
Man, so such a lucky sort of journey, and I think you've got a very coveted role and an important one too. But just if you can timestamp that as well, when was this? Was that you sort of said at the peak of the bull market? Was that 2021 or 22?
2021, I think. I'm terrible with the years, but I think it was the summer of 2021.
Was that when the apes had the actual boat party and that got all sold
Yeah,
out, and there was people lining up around the corners to try and get in? And
yes, the one in New York. I think so. Yes, exactly.
so when your partner poolside was telling you about crypto and NFTs, like what did you make of it? Like, how did you wrap your head around NFTs and community? Like, was it weird? Like,
No,
what
it
were you sort of
wasn't
making of
weird
that?
at all. It wasn't weird at all. I literally understood it almost instantly. I mean, first off, it just made sense. I'm like, okay. I mean, obviously, my partner, he signed with a record label now, but previous to that, he had been completely independent by design. And so this idea of creator royalties and disrupting that was just made complete sense to him, and of course to me. In informing myself, that was probably the first thing that just made a lot of sense and got me excited. And then I love X-Men. I love comic books. Like there is a bit of that, like collectibles that was just part of what I loved. I used to go to Comic-Con, so there was even that nerd aspect of it that made a lot of sense to me. And then I got excited and just started doing my homework. And oh, sorry, let me just backtrack 1 second. I also understood community. That was, like I said, that is part of my purpose in life. And because Google I/O, it targets developers and engineers, there's a natural overlap, actually, specifically with CryptoPunks, because CryptoPunks are builders in this way. And so I was fluent in this language and fluent with this idea of community, and understood it and its audience pretty quickly, especially to me, the CryptoPunks audience, because I have this background in art and this background in technology. So it wasn't weird at all. But then I did my homework, and I read books, which was so funny because they're getting written right as history is being made, and writing a book during a revolution. I can't even imagine. I read books, I researched, I started following people on Twitter, reading avidly. I started listening to podcasts almost every single night to try to immerse myself. And then I started collecting.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
Um, what was the you mentioned that your DNA was more aligned to CryptoPunks. Like, can you elaborate on that? Like, why have you sort of said that?
I think it's because I see CryptoPunks as being makers. Obviously, where the project is they are one of the great artworks of our time, and so obviously my background is in art, and so that just made sense to me. And I think that CryptoPunks are rebellious in a certain way. There's a word that I've said, a phrase that I've said actually, and it's that I create for the like-hearted and different-minded, and that is like personifies what CryptoPunks are. Like-hearted and different-minded, and I think that that is why my DNA. I've felt punk even before I had a punk. I knew that I was punk on the inside.
This is your sounds like this is your destiny, so which is a great thing. And what was your first NFT? Do you remember what that was?
I do. It was a 1989 sister uh, by Blair. Forgetting her last. I apologize. I'm forgetting the artist's last name, but it was a 1989 sister. But I have a really good fast follow. My second NFT was a Terraforms by Math Castles.
Wow.
So I feel like I really nailed it.
Great choice. Another from another punk, no less.
Of course.
Uh, Blair Breitstein, I think is her name. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
let
This
me
is
make sure I shout
yeah, I've
this
got
out
the,
properly because I do.
no,
I
they're
mean,
cool.
honestly, 1989 Sisters is a super cool collection, especially for women in the space. And I wanted to get an NFT that I felt was representative of me. So it was my first PFP. I guess it's she just Blair Brainsting. So shout out to Blair, 1989 sister.
So Nat, how long has it been since you've been, I guess, GM of Punks now? How long have you been in the seat?
Yeah, like I said, I've been behind the scenes for a little while. And then when Noah transitioned, I very abruptly took on that role. And, I guess I'd kind of been doing the job for a while at that point. But I guess, gosh, August, it was a week after my 40th birthday. So yeah, August 20th or something like that.
Oh, so less than is it less than a year? Yeah.
I know it is. It might even be less
Wow,
than 6 months. Yeah.
that's
What a
crazy.
whirlwind, right?
Um, is it what you expected? Like, in terms of where we are now? Like, I mean, looking back, I mean, it just feels like forever. Like you've just done so much, right? Like, or it's sort of seen like all the things that punks have been doing. They've been moving in the last 6 months, quite a lot of events, a lot of
Yeah.
things happening.
Yeah. I mean, I think punks are exactly where they should be. And I'm really happy to have contributed to that, in some way. And I see my responsibility as a steward. And yeah, there's parts of the job that are harder and there's parts of the job that are easier than expected. I think the part that I didn't expect was, you know, I've been behind the scenes of a lot of cool things. And in fact, I often tend to partner with artists that are more obviously the face of a project. And so for me, stepping into being a more public person or
Mm.
someone who represents something, CryptoPunks at Yuga specifically, was challenging for me because, yeah, I just had never really, that wasn't on my bingo card. So growing into that part of it has been probably the most hard and has been a vulnerable process. And I've just tried to have an open door policy and ask, as you very well know, ask a lot of questions and try to understand everything and be thick skinned about feedback and try to
But
try to have a grander vision and just keep working towards that North Star. And I also think we had been laying the foundation of where we take the project for a long time, very, very thoughtfully. So in a lot of ways, ideas we've had for a long time are just being realized right now, and have some momentum, I guess. So yeah, it's a and the parts that have been easier of the job, it's just the community by and large has been incredibly kind to me, and welcoming and communicative, and I've very, very much appreciated it.
awesome. And I think you're probably being nice there as well, because I know punks are a very hard group to get alignment on. Everyone's got very independent views, and the leaders in the sort of own right as well, and trying to corral all the sort of different views and take that on in the way that you have has been quite sort of refreshing too. So I think you've managed all of that very, very well. And um, in terms of punks, and I know you've sort of touched on this briefly in other spaces as well, but would you mind just sharing just a quick sort of overview again around, what's the sort of the punk strategy here? And I think people are sort of keen to sort of know, what's sort of next for punks. And I know,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think that, I've said it before, so you've heard me speak before. Apologies if I'm repeating myself, but there are three pillars to punks, and I'd say the first pillar is always going to be legacy. And that means that keeping up and maintaining all the initiatives to cement that legacy, whether that's the book or conversations with museums, the best museums and most prestigious museums in the world, just making sure that dialogue is there and making sure that we cement punk's place in the history of art, and expand that legacy further than anything that this. I think we all have great dreams, but expand that legacy further. I'd say the second pillar obviously is community, and that's to me about ensuring that we're co-building together, that we're creating experiences where the community can connect, and supporting just what the community does, and making sure that there's that freedom and dialogue. I really do see us as co-builders. Yuga might own the IP of punks, but they don't own CryptoPunks. It's a collaboration. We are in a living art project, and we are deciding our destiny together. And then the third pillar is innovation, and that's about experimentation to me. And I think that the first project we launched that really I think is a move in that direction. I'd say the second. I think some of Quit's work with Stash, which is kind of the underlying technology under the new wrapper that we launched, is definitely about pushing innovation on the blockchain forward. And I'd say with the Punk in Residence program that we just launched with Nina, and that one actually is also about legacy, and it's about not only we have to play nice with the traditional art world, we get to also hack the traditional art world. We also get to disrupt. We get to be in dialogue, and I think that's all part of ensuring the legacy of punks, forever. And again, I think they've already cemented their place. So in a lot of ways, it is about just not fucking it up. But when I try to ask myself, what can Yuga do for punks that they can't do for themselves? And that is when I think about 2025. That's what I'm thinking about. I'm really at this point thinking 2 years ahead of how do I take this project further and further and further, and take the responsibility of CryptoPunks as the most respected forefathers, Rosetta Stone, proto NFT, the catalyst of all of this, and make sure that the world knows about not only CryptoPunks but this space. And that is, I think, only CryptoPunks as a collection can do that.
uh, uh, um, amazing and well said. I think it's pretty. I think the way that you sort of laid it out is quite thoughtful with those sort of three pillars, and I think probably allayed some fears that I guess Yugo was a sort of a corporate giant just trying to step in and take over the brand, but it sounds like you really sort of see punks as partners in all of this. Um,
100%. I think the punks community can do stuff that Yuga can't. And I that's just the reality of it. And I love that. I mean, like I said, I really, and I wrote this on the brand hub, which we launched, the line that we are in a living art project together. We are literally writing art history together. And that is such an incredible thing to think about, just a concept to think about. And I think that when you bring that level of gravitas and responsibility to not only what you do, what I do as CryptoPunks GM, but what you do as Max, CryptoPunk holder, it I think that when we move that way in the world, I think some of the I don't know. This is maybe I'm waxing poetic again, but I think it's an important thing to think about how you move in the world as a CryptoPunk holder.
Absolutely. And I'm just trying to think about what kinds of questions would punks want to be asking. Well, I think one I'd be curious to ask is, how are punks um, spoken about within yoga? I guess amongst the senior ranks in terms of strategy. Where does sort of punk sit on the pecking order? Because I think there's a lot of things that yoga's tackling right now with Bored Apes, with Meebits, with, Other Side and gaming and a whole bunch of things. Like, where does sort of punk sit in that sort of pecking order?
Yeah, I mean, by design, CryptoPunks kind of run as their own little team and unit. And to be honest, I think we have Quit and Dash, and they're both incredible engineers. I mean, Quit is a legend, and we have a great team, and we run as our own unit a lot, and like I said, that is by design. And in terms of pecking order, I mean, it would be remiss to say, I think just naturally, Yuga has a BOAC is Yuga's DNA in a certain way. You know, the founders of Yuga created BOIC. And I think that's okay. And I think that they really but they're very respectful of CryptoPunks. They were inspired by Matt and John, and they continue CryptoPunks as a really sacred and important collection that they feel responsible towards. And so I sit on the leadership team. I'm considered part of senior leadership at Yuga, and I have a seat at every table. I have a voice in the room. And, CryptoPunks are, I think, in pretty good hands right now.
Awesome. Nice to sort of hear. Um, and then maybe just switching gears a little bit to be a little bit more focused on your CryptoPunk. Um, why Punk number 98? All the ones you could have chosen. And how did this sort of come about? Like, did you have much of a choice? Like, what sort of was
I
presented to
did
you?
I did have a choice. And I think I might have said this story before, but I was literally sitting next to Matt and John when I received my punk in my wallet, which is an insanely surreal experience because we were working on the upcoming book together. Um, yeah, it was just so intuitive. I don't know. Sometimes I think about Malcolm Gladwell and that book, Blink, where you must be processing information and making decisions, but it's happening so fast you can't track it, so it just feels like intuition. Um, and she was just undeniable to me, and I've always kind of had this love of androgyny and that dandy spirit and Amelia Earhart, and she just reminds me of that type of persona and character. And so not only was she aesthetically clean and beautiful, I love that welding goggles were a female only trait, and I loved her palette, and I just love that she felt, yeah, androgynous in a way, and felt like a builder who's going to get her hands dirty. And I projected all that onto that, all that onto Punk98. So yeah,
Amazing. She's a beautiful punk. Were you looking at any other traits at all, or was it the Welding goggles? You to clear one
I
off.
was looking at other traits. So I also looked at some. I also really liked the wild white hair. And I also love the blonde. I just love the color of the blonde. But I'm a brunette. I couldn't do it. The wild white. It was it was a tough call there. But I just felt like in the end, I'm not a hacker, and I wanted to respect that. And so I went with Punk98.
Amazing. If you weren't restricted by that set of punks, would you have like a dream punk in the collection?
Okay, so no, I am in my honeymoon phase with my punk. My punk is the best punk out there. So we're in love. I don't have a wandering eye. Literally, it's actually really funny when was it? It's Gwendol, right? Who worked on that make your dream punk, and you could play and design your own dream punk, and I just couldn't do it. I was like, mine's perfect.
Love to hear it. If you had to describe punk culture for you, how would you describe that?
I mean, I think it's that same phrase I was saying before, like-hearted, different-minded. There is no one, I'd say that when you look at BOIC, for example, there is a DNA there that just unites them all in a certain way. Whereas for punk, I think there's a spirit there, and they're very, very different in a lot of ways that I think is what makes CryptoPunks as a community so special, is its differences. So yeah.
And I want to ask you maybe a contentious question here. How do you feel about V1 punks?
Are you trying to get me in trouble? Next question.
Okay. I'll skip to the next one. What about derivative punks?
Um, I think there's probably like the official party line here. I love derivatives, projects. I think it's a lot like kind of this ethos, in Renaissance art is the more that an artwork is seen, the more valuable it is. And I feel that way about derivatives. And there's people like Piv, whose work I just think is so cool and fun. So I'm a huge fan. I love derivatives.
Um, and who are your sort of favorite artists in this space right now? Are you sort of eyeing any particular sort of crypto
Yeah, I
artists?
mean, I love Nina Chanel Abney. I love William Apon. I think Kim Assendorf is a legend. Uh, I'm obsessed with Martin Grasser. That's also probably because I'm a tennis player, so I'm really eyeing love. I need to get one. And I also love some artists that aren't in NFTs totally yet, but actually are in AI. They're kind of NFT adjacent, like a Memo Atkin is an amazing artist. Su Gwen Chung, an amazing artist. Both of them really use AI and conversations with robots to reveal our deeper humanity. So that's who I'm watching and eyeing and shouting out on this podcast.
Amazing. And you mentioned Willem Apan, and I know that you also picked up that Avant piece that he just dropped as well. So congrats. I'm a bit a simple plug because I got one too.
Yes. I just received mine in the mail, and it definitely is designed to be seen in person. We kept posting, zoom in, and it's true. It's zooming in with your own eyes is a pretty incredible experience. And Avant Art did an amazing job. Obviously, we collaborated with them last year, and nothing but class over there. And Abigail has a great eye and great knowledge for art.
Yeah, they're a really good, a cool team, and I think I've basically run out of wall space. I think my wife's sort of losing her shit of all the stuff that I bought from Avant.
I
Uh,
know. I'm on a shopping cleanse right now. I've sort of failed though because I picked up a Bright Moments mid pass for Paris because I was trying to get that Martin Grasser. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard,
do
and I have
you
a circular house. Also, I don't have a lot of wall space.
do you collect much yourself? Like, are you a collector of things like art in real life and other things?
Definitely collect art. Definitely collect clothes. I'm a huge clothes and fashion collector. I collect teaware. Um, it's funny. My mom has that collector gene, and so does my nephew. I don't have it the same extent. My mom has Fabergé eggs and teacups and Disney toys, and my Barbies as a kid, I wasn't allowed to play with them because she collected them. So I think there's this genetic thing if you have that collector gene.
Sure. Yeah, and you mentioned you've got a circular house, and I was probably FOMOing a little bit too because you recently threw a a punks a punks party at your house. Was that is that right?
Yes, yes.
The
The
disco
punk
cabin?
party at the disco cabin, exactly. That was so fun, and I definitely think I was, blurring I think Valco said, "Oh, there's a lot of blurring of boundaries this weekend," because it wasn't an official yoga thing. It was just, because experiences and events are such a part of my DNA. My partner is this great disco DJ. We call our house the Disco Cabin. It's up in the Malibu Hills. We have 180 views of the ocean. I just kind of wanted to bring punks into my home and I don't know, build a little bit of intimacy and realness. And, the party was kind of pink and feminine and there was flowers and, pomegranates and it just felt like an offering from me. And it was actually a really, really special moment and wanted to kick off the year. Right.
No, it was, it looked really nice. It had like I don't know, it had like almost like a 70s peace vibe to the whole thing, like a hippie sort of vibe, which is kinda cool.
Yes, yes. I mean, the house
Um,
was built in the 70s. It actually was built by, oh my gosh, why am I forgetting right now? Um, Tim Matheson, who's the main actor from uh, Animal House, and it's just his like party psychedelic house. And um, Mariel Hemingway lived there for many years, and so it's just this arty, weird 70s retro house that people definitely want to do psychedelics. So I'll have to do another, and you'll have to come back.
well, that might be for another podcast, 'cause, I'd love
Punkcast, the
to.
psychedelic version.
I'd love to. Maybe we should have prior to getting on the call. Um, just going back a little bit too, I think you were talking about your time at Google and all the things that you sort of been working on that led you up to have a very different view on community and experience design. And I think just listening to you talk about, even like hosting a disco cabin for punks, like how are you sort of seeing, I guess, experience design, and maybe bringing something a little bit more fresh to the space?
Ooh, wow. I feel caught off guard. I mean, I think it's about thinking about ways that people really connect and trying to break down some of those barriers and walls that we all have. And this is a space that is both about art, it's also speculative, it's businesses, there's livelihoods. I think it'd be cool to have an event where you're not allowed to talk about what you do for a living or what NFTs you're buying. Literally, you're banned, you're kicked
Yeah,
out. And I
yeah.
think, and I actually designed this game that has all these questions in it that like prompt intimacy, and some of them are weird prompts that again, use your left hand only, or put down your phone and do this. Like these types of just subtle things that we can do that kind of shake people out of pretension and allow people to connect in different ways is something that I love. I think about bridging gaps a lot, and thinking about bringing punks to the mainstream and having people understand what punks are. So also thinking about how do we create experiences and events that they think are cool and want to be at as well. So maybe there's a little bit of disruption there planned. I have some ideas. Stay
No,
tuned.
that's no, that's awesome. Like I love all of that because and you're right. I think like there's only so much I guess Discord and Telegrams really take us, and I think it's really having the punk brunches and these events where you get to connect with punks that bring a little bit of magic back to sort of, I guess, the punk community and what it means to sort of be a punk holder. And so I mean all the things that you're sort of describing, I really love that because even like going to a conference or something, like you always feel like you have to be putting on a bit of a front, right? Like everyone's almost like signaling in a way in terms of this where is where I am on the pecking order, and you should be talking to me because I've got X, Y, and Z access and da da da. And but I think like with punks, all of that sort of goes away. Everyone's just cool and vibing with each other, which is nice and refreshing.
And I think that what you're saying is very, I mean, I feel that, I feel a responsibility to be this representative now of CryptoPunks at Yuga. And that's why I was kind of excited, as I mentioned before, for this conversation to just be human and, let down my guard a little bit. And that's why I did the event at the disco cabin, because people got to see my home and see what I'm about and see my partner and meet my partner and maybe get to know my Natalie side a bit more, not the Stone side. And I think it is really important. And I think it's important not only just IRL, but I think there's potentialities in digital spaces too. I mean, I'm always excited when people start posting their dog pics in the Telegraph. That's what I want to see more of.
Yeah. Do you have a dog?
I do. His name is Soren. He's the best. He's a Shih Tzu and Lhasa Apso, and he's just a really cool guy.
Yeah, I've got a small Yorkshire Terrier, named him Cujo. I don't know if you remember the actual movie, but completely opposite. Awesome. And then if you were to look across, I guess, into the punk community, do you have, a favorite punk or series of punks that come to mind?
Okay, I mean, so many. I feel like I'm gonna not pick the usual suspects. Probably people that everyone knows whom I love. But I mean, I kind of want to shout you out. I think this is an amazing offering that you give to the CryptoPunks community, and you're always so lovely and have such great ideas and that are so thoughtfully considered. So you, I love the mods. I mean, I love the OG mods, Shuli, Ross, VR, Raster. But I also love, the new mods, Suzanne, Pixels, Nifty, VR Punk, Snacks. I'm obsessed with Nifty. I think that Nifty just puts out so many cool things, and I literally use his tools all the time to make my job easier. So shout out. I want to give a shout out to maybe, or, I love Direct. He's a lovely artist, talented artist, and just such a warm human being that's so full of heart. And I think Lore Punk is so full of heart. And, she reached out to me and has really been there for me when things get spicy in the Discord or spicy in the Telegram. Just kind of a safe place and a safe person. And that's actually meant a lot. Um, that she's had the emotional, what's the word, EQ to check on me when I've needed it. So
Yeah, a lot
too,
of
but
punks.
that's too long of a list.
Yeah, you've mentioned a lot of punks there, and very well deserving too. I think they're the ones that sort of live and breathe punks, and maybe bleed for punks on a day-to-day basis too. So very, very passionate group of people that you've just sort of mentioned. And if you had to pass on a message to the next owner of your Punk98, what would you like to say to them?
Well, hopefully, um, that's a passing along to my daughter. And I think I would tell him or her, how about that? Make stuff, be brave, be like Punk98.
Well said. Actually, Nat, I forgot to ask you a little bit more about the book and how that's progressing.
Yeah. I mean, I know. Okay. So I think this podcast is going to come out after we announce it. So I'm going to give you the alpha right now. You'll have to edit it out if I fail. um, but the book is being published by Phaidon, and we're really, really excited about it. And we'll relaunch pre-orders soon, and it will be on shelves globally. But having Phaidon pick up the project and publish the book is such a huge, huge, huge moment for CryptoPunks. And it's pretty much all done and ready to be out in the world. So you heard it here first or second,
Heard it
but
here
you're
first.
hearing it first, Max.
Super privileged. And I guess just we didn't really speak much about Punk in Residence as well. I know Nina Chanel is a huge name that's sort of joined, I guess, the program. Um, do you have more artists lined up for Punk in Residence? So, you know, I mean, you don't have to drop the names, but what I guess what is the plan for Punk in Residence, and yeah,
Yeah,
how does
yeah.
everybody get involved with that?
Well, it's all about, encouraging and championing innovation and expression in digital art and blockchain. Um, and it's a really, really open-ended brief. So yes, we are in conversations with future artists. Ideally, we would do a second Punk in Residence, tenure and this year. Um, right now, it's such early stages. It's really an experiment. And of course, the CryptoPunks collection is unalterable. It's undeniable in its impact. And we're not releasing derivatives here. Really, the intention is to continue to expand the legacy and be in that conversation by getting being in that conversation with the trad art world, by having disruptors and advocates for the space, ambassadors for the space like me and Chanel. So um for now, it's a curatorial process, but I definitely have some thoughts for punk artists as well in the future. And stay tuned.
Amazing. Yeah, looking forward to it. And Nina's such a huge name in the space too, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity for punks to get a bit more visibility in the trad art world in some ways. And I know you sort of screenshotted the conversation that you had with Chris Lyons, that you guys were cooking and working on this for quite some time. Um, Chris Lyons, didn't really get to know much about him other than when you introduced us to be the DJ at the Punk's Brunch in Hong Kong. Um, what a legend! He is an absolute legend. And obviously,
Literally a legend.
very
Literally a
well connected in
legend.
this space.
Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, the other day he just posted a picture and it was just like at Kamal Harris's house. So casual, but Chris Lyons is amazing. And for those of you who don't know, you should do a podcast with Chris Lyons. He's the one who helped Jay-Z pick out his Cryptopunk. He supported Alexis and Serena Williams on picking out, the Serena Punks. I mean, he's really a mover and shaker. And I think what's really interesting about Chris Lyons is he really understands culture and really wants CryptoPunks to be a part of mainstream culture. And he has so many amazing relationships. He's a super connector, and he's always there for CryptoPunks. Anything I need, I ask Chris, like, hey, someone over here, and he will move mountains to make it happen. So we have a really good advocate for the project. He's a great guy.
Amazing. And yeah, and it's super grounded. I mean, he just played basically the whole time at the Punk's Brunch in Hong Kong, Afrobeats, for like 3-4 hours on end. So that sort of saved me a bit of pain trying to organize my Spotify playlist. So
Yeah.
thanks for the
So
hookup.
yeah, he played for 3 hours on end while everyone just brunched and talked over him. The patience of a saint.
Yeah, amazing. Well, Natalie, thank you so much for joining Punkcast and for your time. It's a real special privilege to have you on and to get to know you a little bit more, and I think definitely make me feel a lot more comfortable knowing that that you're at the helm and advocating for punks in a meaningful and thoughtful way. So appreciate everything that you sort of do for us, even though it might be sometimes occasionally be a thankless job, and a sort of a tough community to sort of deal with. So I really appreciate you doing everything that you do, and yeah, looking forward to smashing 2024 and future years together. I guess any sort of final closing comments, and what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. Long time coming. Really appreciate it. And yeah, sometimes it's a thankless job, but it's truly a dream job. And I honestly think that every single day. And yeah, I'm on all platforms: Twitter, IG, Telegram. I'm not on Farcaster yet, but stay tuned. So yeah, my DMs are open. Thank you for having me, Max. I really appreciate it. And thanks, Punks, for having me as well.
Amazing. Thanks, Natalie. And guys, that wraps up an episode of PunkCast for the week, and we'll be back next week with another amazing punk. Bye for now.